Happy New Year, everybody. It's the first episode of 2025 over here at Locked On Devils, and I am hoping for some different fortunes for the New Jersey Devils. They have dropped their previous 4 games, and they are set to play the Seattle Kraken later tonight at Climate Pledge Arena. Grab your coffee because puck drop is scheduled for 10 p.m. RJ Eskanos of Emerald City Hockey Podcast accompanied me on today's episode. We previewed the matchup, who's going to snap their losing streak first. The Kraken have dropped their previous 2 games. Devils, like I said, are losers of 4 straight. We have a lot to break down in today's episode alongside RJ. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, College Hockey Play announcer, Devils Rider Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. 4 straight losses for the New Jersey Devils. It's been a tough stretch of things. They just left California, but they're not out of the West Coast just yet. They're set to play the Seattle Kraken later tonight when this episode goes live. And joining me on today's episode to celebrate the first episode of 2025 is a guy who I've actually met in Seattle a good while ago. It is RJ Eskanos from Emerald City Hockey Podcast. RJ, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, Trey. It's been a little while. I saw you at the draft too in Vegas, but feels like it's been a long time since then.
Yeah, that we first met when I traveled to Seattle to cover Devils and Kraken, and I was actually familiar with your podcast. I do listen to it because you guys are one of the more popular Seattle Kraken podcasts out there, if not number one. But yeah, this has been a long time coming. It was inevitable. Unfortunately, we couldn't work something out back in December just because schedule conflicts and things like that. But I'm glad that it's finally coming into fruition.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk about the Devils, talk about the Kraken, and I'm looking forward to this game too.
Me too, because the Devils need to snap their 4-game losing skid. But before we talk about the Devils, what's cracking with Seattle? Because the Kraken are in the Pacific Division. That is a very tough division when you got the Oilers, Kings, Golden Knights, and I guess Quinn Hughes and the Vancouver Canucks. They're not too far behind either. Is there any hope for the Kraken at this point?
Not much as far as making the playoffs this season, which really was the goal going into it, right? I mean, their playoff odds, if you look at the different models, they're probably hovering around 1%. It's a rough situation, right? I mean, at Christmas, they were about 8 points out of a playoff spot. I believe the last team to actually make the playoffs when being 8 points out at Christmas was the 2011 Buffalo Sabres. So it's been a while since a team has done something like that. And really, the problem has just been the search for a consistent 60-minute effort, which they haven't been able to give very often this season. And that's been their problem of late too. I mean, the recent trend that the Kraken have, and this is important to know if you're kind of previewing this game, right, is that they will go behind early. They will play terrible for maybe 20 minutes, 40 minutes to start the game. And they just put on this crazy push with 10 minutes or so to go. And it's actually worked a little bit recently. They had big comeback wins over the Canucks and almost tied it against the Edmonton Oilers last game. But you can't do that consistently and get away with it in the NHL. You know, anyone who watches the league, you know, is familiar with that. But it's been a rough season for the Kraken. I think the core group of veteran players just isn't good enough. And I think we're kind of realizing that that's the case. The young guys haven't maybe taken the steps forward that we've wanted to see, even though Shane Wright has had some good flashes. Matty Beniers has kind of found his game of late. But overall, we're just not seeing the level of performance that everyone was hoping for. You know, the big free agent acquisitions as well with Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson. Montour's been really good. He's done everything you could ask, but Chandler Stevenson has been, I mean, if you look at the various metrics, arguably maybe even the worst forward in the NHL, certainly compared to his contract. That one's been really rough. And yeah, just the season overall has not gone the way the Kraken wanted it to, and the playoffs are very unlikely.
Well, selfishly, I hope that works into the favor of the Devils because, like I said, it's been a tough string of games for the Devils while they've been on the West Coast. And you talked about how they get off to slow starts and they start to click a little later in the game. I think that's been what's been happening with the Devils during this California road trip. Unfortunately, they lost to the Ducks, the Kings, and the Sharks. And it's one thing to lose to the Kings, but the Ducks and Sharks, those are wins that the Devils should have come out victorious in. And then prior to coming out to California, they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes. But some circumstances haven't gone their way. For example, in the game against the Hurricanes, Timo Meier got the heave-ho from the matchup for allegedly kneeing Martin Necas, even though he led with his shoulder. I don't think that should have resulted in Meier getting ejected, but it was a tie game in the third period, and then the momentum shifted into the Hurricanes' favor after that ejection. And then against the Anaheim Ducks, the Devils were in danger of getting shut out once again. The Ducks had their number for the first two periods, and then the Devils started to answer back in the third period, but it was too little too late, and the Ducks squeaked away with a 3-2 victory. Then the Kings, the Devils actually lead the NHL along with the Nashville Predators in opponent shutouts. They've been shut out 6 times this season. Right below them, I think it's a many-way tie, but the Kraken have been shut out 5 times.
I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
But yet the Devils, out of all those teams that have been shut out, are still in a prime playoff position. So that's a interesting fact, but that's something that needs to be changed. And so they get shut out against the Kings. However, controversially, Stefan Noesen was called for goalie interference. He was not a happy camper after the game. I don't know if you and Dylan have this type of discussion on your platform, but in the words of Noesen, I don't even know what goalie interference is anymore. Like what qualifies as goalie interference? That's my thing. So
yeah, I mean, we've been baffled by some of the calls. It feels like if you're following any given team in the NHL, there's always going to be some that just you have no idea whether it's goalie interference or not, what the call is going to be, and it could go either way. I think Dylan and I have kind of just resigned ourselves to that coin flip most of the time. It's just
a shame because once again, the Devils got shut out, and that was their 6th time being shut out this season. So that could have been a swing for them. But I don't like blaming the referees because the opposing fans are just going to come at me in the comment section. So I try to be as diplomatic as I possibly can. But I think that was complete BS if you ask me. And then in their latest game against the Sharks, the Devils were so close, taking it to OT, and then Jacob Markstrom, I'm sure he would like to have this one back, allowed a goal just a few seconds remaining in the game. I did catch the end of that one. It hit him right in the glove too, didn't it? Yes. So he stopped a decent amount of it, but that's the thing for Jacob Markstrom. He's been good all year long, but at times he lets in a soft goal here and there. But it doesn't usually come back to bite him because it sometimes can happen early on in the game and then he's lights out the rest of the way. But once again, Devils were so close taking it to OT. And when they take it to OT, I don't really care. This is a potential hot take. I don't care if they win or lose in OT because they walk away with something. Something is better than nothing, especially if you haven't been playing your best brand of hockey the last few outings. So that's my thing, which is that desperately needed to go to OT just so the Devils have something going their way. But obviously just didn't happen. I hope you guys are enjoying today's discussion alongside RJ. Before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. I love FanDuel. Unfortunately, my Arizona State Sun Devils couldn't advance in the college football playoffs, but still enjoy it nonetheless. So call your shot. Just visit fanduel.com, join today, and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. All right, let's get back to today's preview episode alongside RJ of Emerald City Hockey Podcast. Take it away once again. So now going up against the Kraken, a team that they've already seen, but back in New Jersey, I think the Devils have a good chance to snap their 4-game losing skid. Last time these two teams played, the Devils came out victorious by a score of 3-2. Luke Hughes scored in that game. Timo Meier and Jesper Bratt also scored. So 3-2 victory. I know this is a while ago, but do you remember that game whatsoever or have any takeaways from that matchup?
Yeah, I actually do remember that game. It was pretty entertaining one to watch. I always enjoy watching the Devils because there's just so much skill, so much talent on that team. I mean, whenever Jack Hughes is on the ice, that's just really entertaining. I remember in the first period too, it felt like both goals, like one for each team, right, were a direct result of Luke Hughes just making something out of nothing. And on the first one was the Kraken goal from Andre Burakovsky, and he just walks around Luke Hughes. I don't know what Hughes was doing. He didn't turn right or something, but Burakovsky just walks him and gets, a breakaway and scores on it. And so that one, I was like, good for Berkey because he had been out for a little while and I think he'd been scratched. And so good for him. But really, that's on the defenseman missing his assignment there. But then, of course, later in the period, Luke Hughes goes and scores from this impossible angle. With just a perfect shot roofed right under the bar. And so I'm all right, well, just that's a wash. Luke Hughes just made 2 goals happen, one for each team. And then the other takeaway that I remember from that game was just wondering why the Devils don't score more given the amount of chances they have in the offensive zone, working the puck around. There's so much skill. The passing is so fun to watch, but it feels like they just couldn't finish. And I don't know if this is a theme all season or if I just saw it in that one game, but it just felt like the Devils should have had maybe 5 or 6 goals in that game, given all the chances and the passing that they were generating.
I am so glad you asked that because it is a big issue that the New Jersey Devils are having, which is productivity on their bottom 6. So Tom Fitzgerald actually talked about this at a recent media availability, which is you can't just rely on your top 6 guys and your power play to do a boatload of the scoring. It has to come throughout all 4 lines. And I actually talked about it in an episode last month. I said the Devils should really eye the trade market to see if they could get a bona fide scorer. Now, a name that's made its way around the Devils discourse, Kyle Palmieri, former Devil, now Islander. I don't know if the finance can work. That's why I miss Cap Friendly so much. But Kyle Palmieri, he's getting up there in age a little bit. I'm not sure if it's just a fan service, but he's actually been solid in terms of scoring. So I think that's what people are looking at, which is you need a player that can score consistently on the bottom 6, because a lot of people, including myself, give credit when credit is due. Someone like Eric Haula, he can play physical, he can work the corners, he can do faceoffs. He's not afraid to play rough and nasty. Same with Paul Cotter. He's not afraid to rack up the hits, throw his body around. But when I spoke to Chico Resch, Chico told me, like, Trey, yes, getting a lot of hits is good, but it's replaceable. So you need to find ways to score a little bit more consistently. And this one hurts a little bit, but Tomas Tatar, a former Kraken, Tomas Tatar was 1 season removed, coming back from New Jersey. He spent time with the Avalanche and Kraken after the 2022-2023 season. And the Devils had a historic year that season. And Tomas Tatar was an underrated asset. He was racking up a lot of points. He had a plus minus well over plus 40. He was a good piece on the Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer line. I was just like, okay, yes, reunite with Tomas Tatar, and he could sort of replace Alexander Holtz, which is score here and there and just provide more of a spark. But that hasn't been the case this season. Tomas Tatar, great guy in the locker room. I love interacting with them. I love the positive energy that he gives the Devils, and I think they rely on that. But the point production is just not there. Curtis McDermott, if you don't fight him, he's not really all that efficient. So, and then Curtis Lazar, he's coming back from injury, easing his way into it a little bit more. That bottom six has been very disappointing to watch the last few weeks. And Stefan Nason could have been that consistent scorer on the bottom six, but the Devils coaching staff brought him up to the captain line, the Nico Hischier line. So he's paired alongside Meyer, Hischier, and obviously himself. That's a great line. You cannot fiddle with that at all. Keep it as is, because having spoken to Nason before, he knows his role, which is to provide some more strength and physicality on that respective line. And that's a match made in heaven. But there's always a consequence to that, because now he's broken up with Paul Cotter and Eric Haula, who were red hot to start the year. But since then, not really all that consistent. And that was an issue that Paul Cotter had with Vegas, which is good player, couldn't stay consistent.
Right. Now, I got a question for you on the Devils' goal scoring, because you mentioned the shutout stat, right? How often they've been shut out. And I see in this recent run, they haven't scored a whole bunch, right? Yet they're still, I think, 8th in the NHL in goals scored. So they're still a high-scoring team generally. Is there something different that you see in the way that they play during those games where you can tell, oh man, we're not going to score tonight, right? Are they not going to the net front? Are they playing differently in any way that you're able to notice kind of a trend there versus when they are playing well and scoring? Because when you get shut out, you may not have the scoring depth, but when you get shut out, even the top guys are getting shut out.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It's a two-sided coin, which is, yes, the bottom six needs to score a little bit more, but why isn't the top six scoring? And I hate saying this, but sometimes the Devils just run into hot goaltending and there's nothing you can do. So that's just I would say that's their biggest issue, which is like when they're generating a decent amount of shots and they're not finding the back in net, it could sometimes get into their head a little bit. But they're still passing really well. They're still creating decent looks for themselves. But at the same time, when you're just like generating 10 shots in a short amount of time and it's not finding the back end net, it can take a toll on you. So you're right. The top six, it's no excuse. They should also score. But going back to the LA Kings example, the Devils did score thanks to Timo Meier, but it was waved off because it was ruled goalie interference on Stefan Nason. So it's just like, okay, there's your momentum killer, if you would. So sometimes if the Devils are on one, they're unstoppable. But when they're ice cold in terms of converting their shots to goals, it's colder than Snow White. No, wait, that made no sense. It's cold. It's colder than It's colder than Frozone. There we go.
There you go. Frozone's good.
There we go.
Good reference.
I have no idea where I was going with that, but there you go.
Yeah, well, that shouldn't be something they'd have to worry about against the Kraken, really. Look, Philip Grubauer has been playing okay. He's actually done all right recently, but like hasn't stolen a game in a while, so you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. I mean, I guess my if I remember the game against New Jersey earlier this season, back in December correctly, my other thought too was that they only scored 3 goals on Grubauer, and Grubauer was coming off, I think, his most recent start, in San Jose. He allowed 8 goals and that was probably the worst game of his entire career. And I was thinking, just shoot more. Like, maybe test this guy if you want to score some goals. Like, it shouldn't be that hard, but just felt like they were playing around with the puck too much.
I think a good example of the Devils just getting absolutely goalied would have to be their game against the Blue Jackets, in which Jack and Luke, they played out of their minds. But Elvis Merzlikins, he was really strong in between the pipes. And you could hear it post-game. He was out of breath. He even said it. He was completely winded after that matchup. So it just goes to show you that sometimes they run into hot goaltending and there's nothing you can really do about it. But it is what it is. And I think another good example is against the Maple Leafs, Anthony Stolarz. He was really good in net. But to Stolar's credit, prior to getting injured, he was really good. He was having a really good showing. So it just goes to show you that sometimes when you run into hot goaltending, it can sometimes take a toll on you. Now, I want to ask you something, and this was inevitable for me to ask, but Capo Caco from the New York Rangers and memes for days from the Devils social media admin team after that trade took place. But it just goes to show you Rangers not really heading in the right direction. Kraken traded away Will Borgen for Kako, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
So how's that been working out?
I think it's been working out great. As much as the Kraken have kind of struggled as a team, Capo Caco has been awesome. He's been a great addition. And I think people on the Kraken side of things were really thrilled with the trade and felt it was good value. I think a lot of Rangers fans that we saw, because of course we saw a lot of Rangers reaction after the trade, of course, felt that, it wasn't even a great trade for them, right? It's felt like both sides kind of agreed that Seattle won the trade. And so far it feels like that's been the case. Capo Caco, I've loved the way that he plays. He's a bigger body, right? He's got that size and he combines it with some skill. There's a reason why he was picked second overall. Hasn't turned into the star player that some have hoped. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is that he uses that size. He's physical along the boards. He wins battles and he goes to the net. That is the most important thing. He goes to the net and he highlights a lot of things that really the rest of the Kraken forwards just don't do. Which is things like going to the net, playing hard along the boards. Looking at him compared to the other Kraken forwards, he just makes everybody look so small. And the Kraken do have one of the smallest forward groups in the NHL. They needed that size. And the biggest impact I think that Capo Caco has had is he has just been a revelation for Matty Beniers. The Kraken have put him on a line with Jaden Schwartz and Matty Beniers, and that has been their top line since they've been put together, really. The Kraken finally have a top line they can put out there against any other line on another team, and they're not going to get outplayed. They're going to win those matchups. And it's really not something they've had so far this season. And so he has helped Matty Beniers just take the next step in his game. Matty has 3 goals in his last 4 games, and a lot of that is due to what Capo Caco is doing. There was a couple games ago, he set up a breakaway on 2 consecutive shifts with like long stretch passes for breakaways. And so we got 2 assists there in that little 2-shift stretch. But I just love what he's bringing. It feels like he's finally figuring out the chemistry element of things too. I think he played like 4 or 5 games before even practicing once with the team because they were on this road trip and they didn't have time to practice. And so now that you see him actually get to practice with the group, what a concept. He's getting even better. So I think fantastic trade. On the Rangers end of it, it sounds like they're not too thrilled with how Will Borgen is playing. He had a rough season.
That's not on look. In Will's defense,
he is not the problem. I can tell you he is not the problem.
Have 99 other problems. Will Borgen ain't number one.
Exactly. So I feel a little bit bad for Will because he's a good guy to have around, and I think he deserves better than to be thrown into that situation. But he's not ever going to be the savior of a team that's in free fall like that. He's a solid stay-at-home depth defenseman, right? That kind of guy isn't going to change things for you. But yeah, so far the trade has been great for Seattle.
Before we close out today's episode, let me tell you guys about Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Hey, it's the new year, and I'm sure one of your resolutions is to save money. So give Rocket Money a look. Okay, it's time to close out today's episode with RJ. For the second time, take it away. I just want to say before we wrap things up that the Seattle Kraken are actually my second favorite team in the NHL, mainly because of my mentor, Ever Fitzhugh. But I've had the chance to interview a few Kraken players, including Matty Beniers, Joey Decord. He and I went to the same school, Arizona State University, best school out west. Sorry, Denver. But Joey Decord's injured, right?
Yes, Joey Decord is injured, so he's working back from an upper body injury. I don't think he's going to be available for the game tomorrow.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. I like Joey, and he's been having a good year, right?
Yeah, he's been having a great year. He's lived up to that extension that they gave him, and just unfortunately dealing with an injury right now. But he's always one of the best guys in the room to talk to, and it doesn't matter whether he's starting that night or whatever. He's always down for a good conversation. We've talked about ASU and the great run their football team had and everything too. So it's always just fun to chat with him.
Yeah, great guy, and hoping for the best. But yeah, the Kraken are my second favorite team to root for and my second favorite team to cover. So I do follow along, RJ. All right. To close things out, predictions. The Kraken are on a 2-game losing streak. Devils 4-game losing streak. Who is cracking, no pun intended, their losing streak?
I hate to say it, but I think the Devils. I think this is one where the Devils will break out of their losing streak because look, I've watched too much Kraken hockey recently to be able to pick them. I think the Kraken are going to start slow again because they can't seem to shake that. They're going to put on a furious push. I don't know. Can the Devils defend a late lead? That's going to give you the answer.
Yes, absolutely,
okay.
100%.
If they can lock down a late lead, they will win because they will probably have a late lead.
Yeah, so that it's funny you actually mentioned that because I actually tweeted something hilarious when Bill Spalding, the play-by-play announcer, put this out. This was December 27th when he put out this stat. The Devils are 19-0-1 when leading after 2. So I can't play Enter Sandman due to copyright reasons, but that sort of reminds me of Mariano Rivera, which is late in the game, he comes in, and you hear that riff, that Enter Sandman by Metallica riff, you know the game's over.
Okay. Well, Kraken will put on a push. I can pretty much guarantee that if they are trailing, but it sounds like the Devils are prepared to deal with it.
Yes, Devils are fantastic when leading after 2, according to Bill Spalding, play-by-play guy for New Jersey. I think there's a good opportunity for the Devils to, once again, snap their 4-game losing skid because losing against the Ducks, losing against the Sharks, especially in heartbreaking fashion, not really ideal. And by the way, is Macklin Celebrini better than Connor Bedard? Because I hear a lot of Celebrini, not much Bedard.
Right now, I think he is. I mean, we'll see how he handles his sophomore year, right? It's always difficult. I mean, we certainly know in Seattle with Matty Beniers and kind of the sophomore slump that he had, when teams get a little more of the book on you, it can be tougher. So it might be a different answer next year. But right now, yeah, I'm taking Celebrini.
And speaking of Matty Beniers, he and Luke Hughes were teammates at the University of Michigan Go Blue. But yeah, I think the Devils can definitely get a win against the Kraken. They got to snap their losing streak at some point. And why not come away with the victory while you're still on the West Coast against the Kraken? That's what I'm hoping for. And what I'm not looking forward to is the 10 p.m. puck drop. But
it's rough out there. I don't know how East Coast sports fans do it. We are living good on the West Coast.
I was spoiled when I was living in Arizona, going to school there, because I said West Coast time or even Mountain time is better because it's like, the game is at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but that means 4 p.m. for us. We can watch the game, then record an episode like we're doing right now, and still have time to like go out to dinner with our friends.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I need to get back out there. But anyway, RJ, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk all things Kraken and preview the game against the Devils. Where can my audience find you at?
All right, so on social media, we are Emerald City HKY. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, everywhere. And then we have a weekly podcast, The Deep Dive. That's available wherever you get your podcasts. And then maybe a particular interest to Devils fans, we do have an interactive post-game show that we do on our YouTube channel after every single Kraken game. So after the game tomorrow, Devils fans, you can tune in, talk about the game with us. We have a live chat going. We read comments from it, and we love hearing the perspective of the other team's fans. It's always fun when they come in there. So that's on our YouTube channel, Emerald City Hockey.
Check it out, guys. RJ and Dylan do great work over at Emerald City Hockey Podcast. And like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Special thanks to RJ once again, and I will catch you guys a little later.